billion, you can buy just about anything you like. Remember, that's literally $1,000 million chunks. And if you're a multi-billionaire, you'll have far more than even that. When it comes to deciding what to purchase, money is literally no object for a billionaire. In many cases, though, neither is common sense. Billionaires spend their money on some crazy stuff. Some of these purchases are gaudy, rich kid versions of everyday items, and some are childhood dreams come true, while others make almost no sense to anyone aside from the billionaire dropping the dollars on them. Check out these 10 crazy things billionaires own and see for yourself. You may own a goldfish or two, but to people with money, that's nothing. But even a regular rich person's wall-to-wall aquarium is child's play compared to what hedge fund manager Steve Cohen has in his possession. In 2005, for the low price of $8 to $12 million, Cohen purchased a 14-foot-long tiger shark corpse, preserved in a giant alcohol and formaldehyde-filled tank. At least he saved money by not having to feed it. This pickled shark is actually a sculpture entitled The Physical Impossibility of Death in the Mind of Someone Living, designed in 1991 by artist Damien Hirst. He originally sold it to an art collector named Charles Saatchi for $93,000. Suffice to say, Saatchi more than made his money back by selling his shark to Cohen. Cohen loves spending his billions on extraordinary oddities, so much so that this video could have been entirely about him. He owns countless works of expensive art, including a Picasso that real estate mogul Steve Wynn accidentally elbowed a hole in. He's also rumored to own a tattooed pig, and once spent $100,000 so Food Network celebrity Guy Fieri would spend a day with him. No word on if Fieri suggested cutting up Cohen's shark and serving it as hors d'oeuvres. For some people, it's not enough that the world knows you're rich. Some, like Sheikh Hamad bin Hamdan Al Nahyan of Abu Dhabi's ruling class, want any alien ships passing by the planet to know as well. And so it went that Al Nahyan went about getting his name etched onto the planet big enough to be seen from space. As befitting billionaire royalty, Al Nahyan owns a private island called Al Futaisi. At some point, he decided he wanted to figuratively shout his name up to the heavens, so he commissioned engineers to dig deep paths throughout the sand that spelled out his first name, Aman. The natural signature stretched out over at least a mile and was possibly up to 2 miles long. What's more, the letters were roughly a third of a mile wide, meaning it was literally visible from space. Google Maps captured satellite footage of the area, and you can clearly see Haman spelled out that high up. Al Nahyan's goal was to make sure his signature was visible from the moon, but nobody went up there to find out for sure if that was a reality. Unfortunately, Haman is no more. Starting in April 2012, workers began to fill the deep grooves that made up the signature, and by June that year it was completely filled in. Nobody involved has ever explained why. Presumably for the same reason nobody's ever revealed exactly when the Sheikh ordered his signature be created, because he's filthy rich and doesn't know anyone an explanation for anything. Guys, how much do you spend on a haircut? 15 bucks? Maybe 20? That's because you are not the Sultan of Brunei, whose haircuts cost about as much as a mid-sized car cost the rest of us. The mega-billionaire Sultan, real name Haji Hassanai Bolkiah, discovered his favorite stylist sometime in the 90s. His name is Ken Modestow, who runs a simple salon in England. He typically charges around 40 bucks for a cut, but the Sultan loves his work so much he's willing to pay much more. Every few weeks, he'll fly Modestow out to Brunei with first-class flight and 5-star hotel accommodations for what amounts to a simple trim. He pays Modestow several $1,000s for his services. Combined with the 7,000-mile round-trip flights, hotels, and gourmet meals, the Sultan ultimately pays around $24,000 for a single simple trim. That's the key word here, simple. The Sultan's hair is not extravagant in any way. It's a simple, short, conservative style with a neat part to the left. He could get that kind of cut trimmed by almost anyone and save hundreds of thousands every year. But when you're worth at least $20 billion, you can afford to make outlandish financial decisions. Nowadays, photos of famous people are a dime a dozen, but 140 years ago, actual pictures of household names were rare as could be. So when an authentic one pops up and you have the millions to shell out for it, chances are you're going to go for it. That's what William Koch did. In 2011, the corporate businessman attended a Wild West auction and observed a small tin-type photo of famed outlaw Billy the Kid. Taken around 1879, it's the only proven photograph of the Kid in existence. You can't get much rarer than that, and Koch was willing to pay the big bucks to snag the ultimate rarity for himself. Before the auction, experts predicted the Kid's photo to sell for $300,000, possibly $400,000. Koch had no desire to engage in a bidding war, and with his billions, he didn't have to. He simply bid $2 million, snuffed out most of the competition almost immediately, and ultimately took home the only known evidence that Billy the Kid was an actual person. The fees paid out to the auction house cost Koch as much as the photo's expected value. Koch wound up paying $2.3 million for the picture. Not bad for a faded old photo that's barely bigger than a credit card, and not even a selfie to boot. It's hard to know for sure what Donald Trump is actually worth. Some say he's worth several billion, while others claim he's not even a billionaire. We do know, however, that he's worth enough that he can afford to buy his own private jet and decorate the nastiest part of it with solid gold. In 2011, Trump purchased a Boeing 757 from Microsoft for $100 million. That alone would be quite the power move, but as the past couple years have proven, Donald Trump does not do anything small. He decided to adorn his new plane to reflect his personality, and one big part of that personality is that he loves gold. His private bedroom is adorned with gold silk from wall to wall, and the main chambers are littered with gold pillows and gold linings on the light gold sofas. Even the seatbelts are plated in 24-karat gold because safety without style really isn't safety at all. But it's the bathroom that turns this plane from typical rich person purchase to crazy rich person gesture. Trump's private bathroom features not just a large circular shower but a solid gold sink and faucet. The sink's mirror is lined with gold, and even a little sign directing you to sit in case of turbulence is lined with gold. No word on whether his toilet is also golden, though this being Donald Trump, you're not risking much money by betting that it is. Everyone knows Leonardo da Vinci is one of history's greatest geniuses and visionaries. Most of us have seen his famed scribblings, featuring intricate sketches of arm and foot bones, river topography, and proved far ahead of his time with ideas for flying machines and compasses, and even studies about how the heart pumps blood that modern science didn't manage to confirm until several decades ago. Many of these sketches can be found in a 16th century notebook called the Codex Leicester. Inside the codex are 72 pages of Da Vinci doodlings and writings that make as strong an argument for the man's immortality as anything else. You might think something like the Codex would be worth huge bucks today, and you'd be correct. As such, most of us can't even consider owning it, but most of us are not Bill Gates. In 1994, the uber-rich Microsoft mogul, who was only worth a measly $10 billion at the time, forked over $30.8 million to purchase the Codex. At the time, this made the Codex the single most expensive book in history. But for a fervent rare book collector and Da Vinci admirer like Gates, whom we can almost certainly consider the Da Vinci of our time, a testament to the Renaissance icon's boundless imagination and almost supernatural forethought was worth every penny. For some billionaires, having all that money means the opportunity to live out their childhood dreams. And how many children grow up dreaming of being Batman? A lot, to put it mildly. Samuel Cathy, the billionaire founder of Chick-fil-A, was apparently one such child. But since being Batman takes a lot of time and physical prowess, he settled on the next best thing, buying a Batmobile, or rather the Batmobile. An avid car collector, Cathy set his sights on the actual Batmobile used in the 1992 film Batman Returns. He wound up spending $250,000 on Bruce Wayne's favorite automobile, something that likely made Ronald McDonald, the Joker of the fast food world, extremely nervous. Being a fun-loving kind of restaurant entrepreneur, Cathy didn't just get one of his assistants to pick up the car and then leave it in a garage. Rather, Cathy himself arrived to pick up his new wheels dressed as the Caped Crusader, and even did a brief joyride around his estate before bringing it to the garage himself. If the sight of a 70-year-old man dressed as Batman and riding around in the Batmobile didn't make his employees smile at least a little, then I'm not sure what would. Some rich people love cars, others enjoy planes. Famed Titanic and Avatar director James Cameron, meanwhile, loves submarines. But he doesn't just spend his money on weekend expeditions. He actually owns his own submarine and uses it. Cameron, as befitting a man best known for a movie about a ship that sinks deep beneath the waves, is a huge fan of the ocean. He's big into marine biology and loves the deep ocean. He enjoys it so much, in fact, that he got himself a submarine. Amazingly, he didn't just go out and buy himself a top-of-the-line sub. He actually built one. He and his team constructed the 11-ton, 23-foot-long Challenger specifically for Cameron and his adventures. And while we don't know exactly how much he spent, a submarine of that ilk costs around $1.5 million on the market. Even if Cameron saved some money by doing it himself, he likely forked over at least $1 million to do so. He hasn't just made quick trips underwater with it either. He's made history in that thing. In 2012, Cameron rode his sub more than 7 miles underwater to the deepest known part of the ocean, the Mariana Trench off the coast of Eastern Asia. He was only the second person to venture down there, and he said the experience was akin to visiting another planet. One can imagine how much money he would have made with a movie about that world, instead of multiple Avatar sequels few of us asked for. The idea of a rich person buying an island isn't exactly unheard of, but when that island is an entire chunk of Hawaii, that's a lot rarer. But it's happened, thanks to billionaire Oracle founder Larry Ellison. Several years ago, Ellison visited the island of Lanai, and like most tourists, enjoyed the lush surroundings and tropical greenery very much. Also like most tourists, he wanted a memento to remember the trip by. But unlike most tourists who buy a trinket at the tourist shop and call it a day, he decided he'd buy the entire island outright. And so he did, forking over $300 million to call 98% of Lanai his own. He then spent several hundred million more to refurbish the island, including a new water filtration system and an Olympic-sized swimming pool in Lanai City, where virtually all of the island's 3,100 citizens live. He also, with this purchase, stopped the Castle and Cook Corporation, which once owned the island, from demolishing much of the island's historic district to build more modern housing and commercial buildings. Ellison isn't just keeping the 90,000-acre island to himself either. You can visit, and if you do, you'll essentially be visiting paradise. This is especially the case if you can afford to stay in the penthouse suite at his Four Seasons resort. There, according to CNBC, you're treated like royalty, with luxurious bedding, priceless Polynesian art to tickle your eyes and brain, and unbelievable ocean views. Outside of the bedroom are horse riding trails, gorgeous private waterfalls and dipping pools, koi ponds, a golf course designed by Jack Nicklaus himself, and even planes for private flying lessons. Expect to pay upwards of $21,000 a night for all of this, however. Once a businessman, always a businessman. Large homes are a rich person's staple, but how many desire a ridiculous house that towers over all others like Godzilla, and just so happens to be the most expensive house ever built? Well, Mukesh Ambani for one. The chairman of Indian conglomerate Reliance Industries is worth around $45 billion, meaning he could have whatever home he wanted. As it turns out, what he wanted was a 27-story skyscraper looking down on Altamont Road, one of the world's most expensive streets. Also, many of these stories sport a double-high ceiling, making it the equivalent height of most 40-story buildings. Inside is pure luxury. Ambani's humble abode boasts a 50-seat theater, a grand ballroom, multi-level gardens, a spa, a temple, 2-story recreation center, and more diamond and jewel-encrusted decor than many would think possible. The total cost was about $1.2 billion, making it the most expensive private residence of all time. And I do mean private. Despite its sheer size, the only people who actually live there are Ambani, his wife, and their 3 children. They employ a full staff of servants and enjoy entertaining guests. But aside from that, this humongous complex that could easily house dozens of families, if not hundreds, is strictly set aside for one uber-wealthy last name only.